Welcome to the Nairobi Health Show, everybody. I'm here with Dr. Neeta Bhushan. Neeta, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh my gosh, Dave, such a pleasure. Love it.
I'm glad to have you. You've got some really interesting talking points, and I just want to kind of read your bio first so people can get a feel for who you are, where you've been, and what you're trying to do, and then we'll dive into the weeds on all of this. So, Dr. Neeta is a cosmetic dentist turned three-time international best-selling author and world-renowned emotional health advocate. That's quite a story in itself. She's the founder of the Global Grit Institute, a wellness education platform for optimizing well-being, and she's the co-founder of Dharma Coaching Institute, a coaching organization training coaches to become the highest versions of themselves. Neeta has shared her thought leadership on grit and resilience on international stages, and also is the host of a popular podcast, The Brave Table, which is a really great podcast that I recommend you guys to check out. So, Neeta, there's more. Your bio is lengthy, and I'm just going to kind of stop there. But I think it gives people enough of a feel for where you've come from, where you're going. But of course, we'd love to hear that in your own words. How does a cosmetic dentist become a world-renowned grit expert?
Oh, yeah. Wow. That means she's had to go through a lot of sucky moments, and we can start from there.
Okay. So sucky moments in your own life is what really prompted the transformation?
Yes. So we can start with the big suck. And that's what I like to call it, because I think many times we have, small sucks in our life. We have, or the sucky human moments, but we don't do anything to them, or we don't do anything with those magical moments of suck, like I like to call it in the book. And we just allow it, and we don't take the lessons from it. Or we tend to shove it under a rug, use some coping mechanisms like accolades and busyness and work, or maybe other coping mechanisms like alcohol, drugs, working out a lot, not eating, or eating too much. So we have all of the vices that we can choose from. Mine happen to be overworking and the busyness. And in my relationship life, it looked like hanging on to love relationships and relationships in that way that would then overlap because I would choose emotionally unavailable men, until it got to a point where I was facing my mirror in my bedroom on December 31st, about a decade ago now. Actually 11 years ago. Around this time frame, so December, right? You're like,
Yeah.
Okay, holiday time, New Year's time, and this is December 31st, and you're thinking, okay, how am I going to plan out for the next year? And for me, I was literally almost, fetal position, and then staring at the bedroom, mirror, thinking like, okay, how did I get here? How did I get to this like a spot where on the outside I was not even 30? I had all of the accolades. I, not just became a regular dentist, but I was transforming people's smiles in their mouth, and all of these amazing things. I had my own practice. I had people working under me. It was a 7-figure practice. Yet I was so emotionally crushed on the inside, and I was so afraid that people would think that I'm like this fraud. And so, but the big thing was that I was living this lie, that I was in this abusive relationship. And that was just the beginning of what I would then unravel in this next phase of my life.
And so you were at rock bottom on that December 31st.
Yeah. Yeah. And it began with, this is a concept I talk about in the book called flying forward. And the fly forward framework, it starts out with, we have this fall, we have a relationship that's not going right. We have, or get a health diagnosis, or we literally get into an accident, like a medical accident, or, skiing accident or car accident, something that fully shakes our world to say, well, wake up. that was the fall. And for me, I had to wake up to another decade before that of really facing my biggest grieving head on, which was all of the grief that I had from growing up, which was losing my
Oh,
mom and my brother
holy
and
cow.
my dad, all through to medical diseases that were completely out of my control. And this went on from the time I became a child caretaker at 10 when my mom got sick, but all the way to 19 when all three of them would pass. And I then had to take care of my youngest brother. So lots of pressure there. And I come from immigrant backgrounds. My dad was from India, my mom was from the Philippines. And you don't get this discussion of talking about feelings in that sort of household. It's more so like, let's perform, let's get, where are the accolades, where are your, did you win the math competition, did you win the spelling bee, all of these
Mm,
things. And it came crashing down on December 31st in a really, really big way.
wow. But before we get into that, maybe I'm the first podcast interviewer who can make this claim. You tell me. I've been to India and the Philippines.
No. Oh my gosh. Yes. And
I have. Oh, both trips are fantastic. Both were on business, but I
okay.
went for long enough that I had time. I went to Cebu
Yeah. Oh,
in
did you
the
do the whale
Philippines.
sharks? Did you?
No, I didn't. We did a lot of temples, and there's a guitar
Yeah.
factory on Mac. Is it called Macman Island? Mac. I can't remember the exact name of the island.
Close. I think
Um,
there's the Chocolate Hills, which are also in Cebu.
yeah,
So
yeah. And the Taoist temple is up there. That was fantastic. A complex all the way up the mountainside. Uh, and we currently have one of our sport reps, Mickey, is in Quezon City, just south of
oh
Manila.
yeah. Yes. My mom
Yeah.
is from Quezon City, actually. She was
Oh,
born
you're kidding.
in Quezon City. Yes, it takes 3 hours to get from the airport anywhere in Manila. It is
Right, right.
there is just I think it's yeah, when you compare like Manila to Delhi, Manila is just you're in a car for like the whole day if you need to get
Yeah,
anywhere.
with your life in your hands, because the driver is absolutely insane. Right? Now you'll be happy to know that our employee Mickey, who's been with us for 13 years, by the way,
Wow.
uh, and she does support for us in the afternoons, and her husband Edward helps us with this podcast. So you'll be getting an email when we publish, and she'll be providing you a gift code to our website as a thank you for being on the show.
Oh,
And that'll come from Mickey. And her husband Edward helps us with the content. And so she'll send you a link with the content and with some graphic design and with a summary of what we talk about. And Edward is the one who puts all that together. So
oh
you'll be
my,
happy to know this is a largely Filipino-based production after I'm
my
done with the interview.
amazing. Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. They are just yeah, the Pinoy family, they're just it's a beautiful place. I'm hoping I can take my kids there within the next year because it's been calling because my husband's never been and my now husband I should say has never
Yeah.
been. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Let's go back to your story. So you hit this rock bottom. Now, I'm going to read between the lines here. You have the Dharma Institute. I know a little bit about Dharma, and so life includes suffering. There are causes for suffering. There's a way out of suffering, and there's the eightfold noble path. I mean, does this make up part of your story?
It is. I think for me, having to get down to my knees on that December 31st was the beginning of me falling more into my dharma, which is your soul's purpose, which is your and yes, you talked about the eight noble path, yes, but in Ayurveda and in Sanskrit, dharma is just your purpose. And
Okay.
most of the time, we are we're living somebody else's purpose. And for many years, I thought all right, I know my parents always wanted, doctor, lawyer, dentist, engineer career for myself. And I think, well, my first job when my mom was sick was a dental assistant. I was 15 years old. I was living in Chicago, and this doctor, this dentist, Dr. Horrible. Don't make fun of his last name. I know, dentist, and he has a last name like that.
I thought you were making it up.
No, it's the truth. You can
Wow.
look him up.
Okay. Okay.
It's the truth. I guess it's a Polish last name. Um,
Wow.
People would call him Horbal, but he would actually say Dr. Horrible, and
Wow.
Horbal. But it's kind of, as I look back, I'm like, wow. And so that was my first intro into that world. And I think for me at the time, as a 15-year-old whose mom is actually in and out of, ICU unit at the hospital, for me, it was this reprieve that I could actually make somebody else feel good because they're coming in on a Saturday morning for a root canal. And I had nowhere else to channel out, these feelings. So, but I could actually transform them into making somebody else giggle and laugh
Mm,
and maybe connect with them, because that kind of took me away from my reality of like what was actually going on in my life.
right.
And so in understanding your dharma, what we're really talking about is, what are those skill sets that you're really good at? Not just like the tacticals, but for me it was making people feel heard and feel seen, and tapping into bringing people together, because that has been the through line of my life, community, because I had to, when I had people dying around me. Like, how else? And from Filipino backgrounds, everyone's always getting together and together and together,
Yeah.
and
And
and eating a lot of.
eating and making music.
And funny that you bring that up. My brothers and I, when my mom was in the hospital with all the Filipino nurses, we would go to our piano competitions and bring in like our keyboard and perform. We would come back from Filipino dance class and perform for my mom while she was in the ICU. And
Wow.
literally, we were like little entertainers for all the Filipino nurses. They loved us.
Wow.
This was my life. It wasn't seeing my friends or going out on dates or, having a high school hangout at night because we were worried that something was going to happen. It was like that visceral, like, okay, my nervous system is not regulated because there's constant chaos, but there's also magic in some of those moments too, like those get-togethers, like the egg rolls, like the eating and the dancing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to bring you back to from the dark night of the soul onto your growth. You used the word dharma. You define it differently than I understand it, but I've heard it defined so many different ways. I've heard dharma defined in Buddhism. It can either mean teachings or wisdom.
Mhm.
I go to a sangha on a regular basis, and they have a dharma session. But you talked about the word dharma from Ayurvedic sense of purpose.
Mhm.
Talk to us about that a little bit, and how and when did that come into play for you?
Yeah, so it started that dark night of the soul, right? And really coming into owning my voice, saying what was on my mind, what was on my heart, letting people in, and
Mm,
understanding what my gifts were. And that would come, much, much later, recognizing that I love bringing people together, recognizing that my through line is community, recognizing that my gifts are sharing wisdom from the sucky moments of going through loss, of supporting my family members through cancer, of being able to be a good friend to other people also going through sucky moments. So as I had built my practice during this phase of my life, and it was seven figures and it was all of the things, and even through that sucky moment, my practice was still growing. I had to unlearn and focus on my own healing, which meant that I was, saying yes to therapists, saying yes to alternative modes of healing, saying yes to somatic breath works, workshops, satsangs, going to different places around the world, sitting with shamans, doing psychedelic journeys. I mean, you name it, I said yes. And I had my years of yes. And during that time, I was also leaning into what I was discomfort, or like the leaning into the suck, leaning into what scared me, which was, okay, speaking my voice. What did I do? I signed up for an improv class, which then turned into a 5-minute set, which then turned into taking stand-up comedy,
Oh,
and
wow.
and inviting other aspects of myself to reveal, to say, okay, she's not just fully academic. There's other things that I really enjoy and love. And it said yes to different opportunities. So when the time came to say yes to putting a book club together for professional women, who did it? I did. When it came to, hey, you want to attend this pitch fest? There's like female entrepreneurs who are much younger than you that are like pitching their ideas. What's a pitch fest? Okay, I'll go. Turns out I become an angel investor. Okay, we're going to say yes to that. And then I started a nonprofit. I started 5 other ventures of, throughout these years to really start this speaking practice. And I was speaking on behalf of young women and girls to build their self-confidence, because it was this nonprofit that I created, which took me to San Francisco, and it took me to the Bay Area to learn from the really big giants over at Stanford. And that's what blew me
Wow.
open. It blew me open to this whole arena of the startup world, of coaches, of mentors, of investors, of advisors. And that you don't get at dental school or medical school. That
No, no. Did you
yeah.
sell your practice then?
So when I actually got to Stanford, I was like, whoa, whoa. And this was for a nonprofit management, weekend course, basically. It,
Okay.
it opened up my eyes. It opened up my eyes to, this is how the rest of the world thinks. This is how people, everyone there is a mover and shaker, and they're like wanting to save and change the world. And
Hmm.
for me, I'm like, wow, okay, I have my tiny little practice. How
I
is
see.
this possible? And so that's when I said, I declared to myself, I'm like, I'm going to live here. And literally, I declared it. And 6 months later, I sold my practice to a junior dentist that was working for me at the time.
Okay.
And I stayed on to consult him as well. And I started a consulting practice on the side, helping people with their emotional intelligence, because I had already knew how to build a business with hustle and everything else. But most people don't have that. And what I was talking about at the time was emotional grit and resilience. And it was based off of so much of the alternative modes of therapy and healing that I was doing, while I was also starting to mentor startup founders, because I was investing in these female-led startups. And so that was that bridge, that then for me, it was owning, okay, what's my Dharma? What's my Dharma? And to help people share their truth. And that's really how it began. And now we have an institute that helps people. We train them and we certify them to be soul purpose coaches, so that they can help others in career transitions, in helping them tune back into themselves after really big, powerful times in their life. And it's been magical. We've had over 1,000 people through our program and doors at Dharma Coaching Institute.
Fantastic. And you've identified through all this, as you've sorted all this out for yourself, and you've overcome all these challenges, which very heavy. I mean, the loss of 3 of the most significant relationships in your life before you're 20 is just unbelievable. But then you went on to have some success, but you always had these difficulties. And even when you were financially successful, you still struggled in big ways in other areas. And in your books, you talk about the fly forward framework, 3 F's. That's a tongue twister to say out loud. It looks really great on paper, though. Fly forward framework: falling, igniting, rising, magnifying, and into thriving. And
Mhm.
is that kind of the outline of the MO that you're teaching people and how to implement your teachings?
Absolutely, yes, because we've all had a fall, and my fall started out with the the relationship that I had to wake up December 31st. It also was I had another fall when I realized like, ooh, dentistry is not my thing. Like I'm good at it,
Wow.
but it's not my dharma. I can still be in this cubicle, and I know some people would die to be in my position, and I think I meant for more, and to actually say it
Mm,
out loud, to acknowledge your truest, innermost desires, that's tuning into your dharma. It's tuning into your own, like you said, your definition of wisdom. And that is so true. It's your wisdom, your purpose. It's kind of like how the Japanese have their ikigai. It's their contribution and their North Star and their gifts and how they want to show up in the world. Dharma is the same thing. And, it starts out with, okay, we are ignited, which is that second stage. We have to make a decision. And then we get into the suckiness in stage 3, which is the rising, reinventing yourself, finding out what you like, what you don't like. And then we get into magnifying, where, me taking a stand up comedy class where I
mm,
was so afraid to even open my mouth in front of people, let alone say a joke and create a joke and make fun of myself. That's the ultimate
right.
test of resilience, because stand-up
Right.
comics, I was so fascinated for a while, like, wow, they definitely get it because they say it, and sometimes they get slapped in the face. I mean, it's a full art, and I was so committed to leaning into my edge a little bit more, and that's when you're magnifying. That's when you're like, I'm so unapologetic, and I accept where I am. I'm not. I might be a novice, but I'm on that road. And then we get into thriving. And that thriving doesn't mean that you're never going to have a fall. It doesn't mean that you're never going to have a sucky moment. It just means that now you have the tools, so you're not going to fall as hard as you did in the past.
And along the way, for yourself or for others that you coach, how much of this do you think affects health? Was your health journey in jeopardy at any point along the way? And of course, as human beings, we're so complex that each different element of our life affects other things. In your own story, you created tremendous entrepreneurial success with a 7-figure business, and yet inside had a broken part of you at the same time. And so let's just touch on health for a minute,
Oh,
and either for yourself or for your clients. Speak to those people that may be struggling physically.
oh gosh. Yeah, I'm totally open when I share this, even on my podcast on the Brave Table. I struggled for years with anxiety, for years, crippling anxiety, even. I didn't even know what it felt like to not feel anxiety or anxious thoughts, because that was the chaos that I grew up with 2 decades of my life. So much so that in my 20s, when I was going through the chaos of the relationship, the first marriage that I was in, I had really bad stomach issues. Stomach issues, doctors couldn't figure out what it was. I don't talk about that quite a bit, because I then started, all of these different regimens, and I became, health was a big factor for me ever since I was growing up. So imagine having gut issues even when your core value is health, because you saw both of your parents pass from cancer. And
Interesting.
so
Yeah.
I was a runner. I did marathons. I did triathlons. When juicing was a thing, I did that. I was all about all of the fads. Yet part of me also struggled with like the orthorexia of like eating super, super healthy and being so rigid about my health that I wasn't even going to allow myself to skip a day or like have a cheat day, because God forbid I would get sick. Yet I was still struggling with my gut issues that I couldn't figure it out
Interesting.
until finally which is why I'm such a big proponent of emotional health. It was until I started seeing my emotional health coaches. And this was in the form of, alternative types of modalities of feeling our feelings, of releasing, and almost like going to a, emotional release, like retreat, where you're releasing out the pain, journaling out your emotions of how you're really feeling, and where emotions sometimes get stuck in the body. If we think about it, that anxiety, and this, the anxiety it is related to, are we in fight flight mode of our, or are we in rest or digest? That can also activate, which is why anytime that you're nervous about doing something, you may have to go to the bathroom, right? Your nervous system is going to be so activated. That was for me at least a decade in my 20s, and it's not uncommon.
Wow.
Right? For people to go through that in the early years of their life, or going through something really traumatic.
Right.
So it wasn't until I started utilizing different modalities, using Reiki, meditating on a daily basis, going to a meditation retreat, going to a yoga retreat, fully immersing myself in alternatives, that brought me back into, oh, okay, I can actually start talking about my anger, or my ability to not be okay with anger, my ability to not be okay with my grief, and work through those emotions in a safe environment. And now, obviously, I've written this book that shows you how to process feelings one by one. And I even have a journal that I take people through when you buy the book, because I'm so committed to the stuff that we didn't learn when we were growing up. Like, I remember my dad saying, I'll give you something to cry about, because he just had so much to hold in his life. How is he going to take care of a young girl who just probably wanted love from her mom and dad, who wasn't, really there, who I had to grow up
Wow.
really early on for? So how many of you listeners listening that, yeah, maybe you weren't okay with crying, or crying wasn't allowed, or, as a man, probably weren't even able to express. And so, and this is where we learn about our bounce factor, which is another concept that I talk about in the book, to really help process and make peace with our emotions, and to normalize that, okay, yeah, I'm not crazy for feeling this way. It is an emotion, and I can move through it.
Okay, grab your book. It's right there beside you. Show it off. Hold it up to the camera. That sucked. Now what? I love the title. Just straightforward. Just right to the point. It's fantastic. And where do people find your book?
So that sucked. Now what.com. It's also everywhere books are sold, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. So you can get it everywhere. But if you come to thatsucknowwhat.com, you'll get the journal, 40-page journal for free. It's a digital guidebook. And it helps you go through a lot of the concepts that I'm talking about. If it feels foreign, if it feels like, ooh, I've never heard about that before, or I want to go deeper in processing my emotions. Why do I keep getting triggered? Why does that person still annoy me? Where is that coming from? Why do I get angry every time I see this person? We go through all of it. I even have a practice on how to embrace your feelings so we can process it together. And then it comes with my 5-day healing practice, with meditations around healing relationships, visualizations of what abundance you want to take into your life, as well as how to take brave action and how to have optimum energy and vitality. So.
Well, fantastic. You've given us a good taste of what we will find if we get the book. Thatsuckednowwhat.com.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well,
Absolutely.
Dr. Neeta, this has been fantastic. You have a really powerful, difficult story, but you've overcome challenges that many people may not even face. So kudos for you to recognizing, after being a successful cosmetic dentist, that there was something more life had in store for you. I think it's a tremendous story.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. I feel so seen. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Is there any closing thoughts that you want to leave before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, let's be brave to suck at something new, whether it's today, in the final moments of this year, or even what we're going to be doing for next year, right? Be brave to suck at something new, because you never know what magic can unfold when we're doing that.
I
I
love it.
love it.
Be brave to suck at something new. I've never heard that quote before, but it sounds very, very you. That sounds like it's coming right from your heart and spirit
Totally.
to, yeah, I love it.
My own
Well,
quote.
that is your own quote, and it fits with everything that you're doing and everything you shared. So I just love that. Thanks again for coming on the show. It's been fantastic.
Oh, Dave, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you. And for those of you listening, this is Dave Sherwin wishing you health and success.